It's October in Ontario, and these are some fresh fallen black walnuts from this tree right over here. A beauty in Hamilton, Ontario. Black walnuts are native to North America and to this area around the Great Lakes. And they're real difficult to harvest, but they're delicious when you do it. So we're going to show you how from beginning to end. So we've got to mention for just a second about juglone. Juglone is a naturally occurring herbicide that is produced by black walnut trees, especially in their roots, but also here in the shells, the hulls of the fruit. It's non-toxic to human beings, so you don't have to worry about it. It will turn your hands all different colors. It's a powerful dye. And it's also extremely toxic to horses. So if you work with horses at all, or ever see horses, be very, very careful about black walnuts. Even a little bit can actually kill a horse. It may also be somewhat toxic to dogs, so if you have a dog, be real careful what you're doing with black walnut hulls and that sort of thing, and keep it out of their food tray. Just make sure they're not eating it or anything like that. Juglone can also be used as a natural herbicide, and some people will put it in their gardens to kill off certain areas. Virtually nothing can grow underneath a black walnut tree because of the juglone. So step one is picking up all your walnuts off the ground. They're going to fall around October, and I like to take the ones off the ground because the outside of the fruit is going to be nice and soft and it's easy to remove. So once you pick up a walnut, it might be green, might be a little splotchy like this. You're just going to tear this outside of the fruit right off, just like that. That's the outside of the fruit there, and all that can just go be tossed away, put it in a lawn bag, whatever you want to do. And this is your nut. Sometimes it's going to be dark on one side and a little bit lighter on the other, depending on how it's been exposed to the air, but that's fine, it's no problem. So this is a good inside of the nut right here. Put that in my bin. Sometimes you'll find a nut on the ground that's already been exposed to some air. So like this guy here, you can see there's a big crack in there and it's been exposed. Those are usually okay, but I tend to toss them away just because once in a while you'll see a little bit of mold inside there, and I don't like that. So I just ignore those ones. Your tree is going to drop so much fruit that you don't have to worry about throwing a lot of them away. Also remember, if it's your first time doing this, I recommend underestimating how many walnuts you think you're going to want. My first time I took way too many, and once they're out of the fruit, this part's easy, but the shell is going to be really hard to crack, and it takes a lot of work. So don't take too many, just underestimate a little bit how many you think you're going to want. So once you've harvested and hulled all your walnuts that you want, and this is about the amount that I'll take for a 2-year supply, then the best thing to do is dump them all into your sink. If you've got a nice steel sink, or if you've got a wash basin in your basement, that's a good idea. And what we're going to do now is clean off all the little remnants from the outside of the shell. So I just get the water running here, nice hot water, and then I'm just going to go around and just agitate these things. Send them through the water, agitate them. And the walnut shells themselves will create abrasion against the other walnut shells, and that'll help get them clean. They don't need to be perfectly clean. You just want some of that excess gunk that's on the outside of them rinsed off. But if they're not perfectly clean, don't worry too much about it. Anything that's still left is just going to dry up pretty soon anyway, and you'll still have a perfectly good walnut. So now I've got a sink full of black walnuts, and they look about like that when they're reasonably clean. So you can see there's actually a decent amount of stuff still on them, but they don't have to be perfect. Just get them a little bit cleaned off. And then they're going to go into an onion sack, just like that. So again, I dump them in there. So you can get these onion sacks, either you can save them from onions you bought, or you can get them at a grocery store or something like that. But in there, they're going to be exposed to air. And that's exactly what we want, because the next step is these things are going to cure for just a couple of weeks. Once you've got your black walnuts in an onion bag, they need to cure for 2 weeks so that the inside of the nut meat will taste right and look good. Just hang them up somewhere where the squirrels can't get them and let them cure. So our walnuts have been curing for about 2 weeks. Now they're nice and dry all the way to the center. Now comes the hard part. We've got to crack these things. Black walnuts are extremely hard, much harder than the English walnuts that you get at the grocery store, and you're not going to be able to crack them with a normal nut cracker. You'll probably break the nut cracker and you'll hurt your hands before you get anywhere into the shell. Some people will use a vise for this part of the process, but I like just a hammer. Get myself down on some concrete, and I like to go after this soft part with the hammer and get a nice shatter on the shell. The shell shatters just like this. I'm going to take that whole pile of broken shell and throw it in my bowl. So this is just the initial process, cracking in, and then we'll get the nut meats out of those pieces in just a second. So here I have just a few shells with the nut meats cracked. And if it's your first time cracking black walnuts, you're going to discover that black walnuts are not at all like English walnuts. They're not nice and friendly. In an English walnut, once you crack it open, the nut meat is basically right there in 2 easy halves. You just grab it and pop it in your mouth or put it in your baking. Black walnuts have a much more complicated interior. They've actually got 4 separate nodal areas where the nut meats are, plus a middle area. So there's 5 basic zones inside of a black walnut. 1 in each corner and 1 in the middle that has nut meats in it. So getting into those is the complicated part of the process that most people get really frustrated at. And now we're going to show you the best way to do it. Once you've cracked your black walnut shells using a hammer, you're going to get a bunch of different shaped pieces. Like this type, this shape. Sometimes you'll get a half, sort of like that. And hopefully if you've hit them well with the hammer, they've shattered quite a bit. So there's not too much shell still in the way of the nut meats. But there will always be some. So here you can see we've got some nut meats visible inside the shell, but we need to get at them. Some people will use a nut cracker or just hammer them again. But the real trick is to use a wire clippers. Cheap, standard, normal wire clippers, nothing fancy, and clip at the shell, snip at the shell. With some practice, you're going to get to know the spots that will really allow the shell to break open. So there I just snipped this middle portion, and the shell is going to come right off here. And now the nut meats are exposed, and with a little wiggling, I can usually get them out. Sometimes it takes another snip or 2, and that's okay if you need to do that. And out come the nut meats, just like that, and into my bowl. It's October, so hopefully there's some playoff baseball or some early NHL hockey to listen to on the radio, because this is going to take a while to do a full bag of nuts. So turn on a game, sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself. But remember, the key is this here, the wire clippers. So after you've cracked all your black walnuts, you'll have a bowl. Looks about like this. Full of nut meats. There's one last stage until you're finished, and that is to do a hand inspection of all your nut meats. And what you're looking for is a little piece of shell, which is what I've got right in my palm there. As you can see, it looks different from the nut meats, but you definitely do not want that guy to go in your walnuts and ruin your scones when you bite into it, or your muffins, or whatever you've made. Once you've sorted through and gotten all the shells out, just store your black walnut meats right here in a little plastic bag, and I recommend putting those in the freezer, and they'll stay good for up to 2 years. Also, if you have a few walnuts left in their shells, you can store those in the freezer as well. Your tree is only going to drop nuts every other year, most of the time, so you can store your walnuts in their shells for up to 2 years as well, and get to cracking them whenever you have the time. I hope this has been helpful, and you'll find your black walnut harvesting and cracking is much more efficient now. Substitute black walnuts anywhere you see a recipe that calls for walnuts for that great, smoky, rich North American flavor that's a signature of our region. Enjoy.